Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Brown Bag Regional Webinar Series, a program of the UC Merced Central California Small Business Development Center Network. I'm Kelly Bearden, Director of the CSU Bakersfield SBDC, and I'll be your moderator for the webinar today. I am live from the campus of CSU Bakersfield and will be joined by our presenter, Katie Winders, who's from the Alliance Small Business Development Center in Modesto. She will join us shortly. But first, a little bit about the SBDC program and what you can expect out of the webinar for today. The SBDC program is a national program with over 1,100 centers across the country, funded in part by the U.S. Small Business Administration. In California, we have nearly 40 of these centers, and the Central California network of UC Merced Regional Network comprises of 5 centers located in Modesto, in Fresno, here in Bakersfield, San Luis Obispo, and Monterey. Before I introduce Katie, let me give you a few tips about the webinar and how to interact today. If you have a question, please go to your dashboard. Your dashboard is on the right. You'll see a few different item selections with an arrow pointed to the right. If you click on that, for example, if you click on question, if you want to ask a question, it will open up that box and you can ask a question. At the conclusion of our webinar, in the last 10 or 15 minutes, what we'll do is we'll answer the questions. So please keep those questions coming. We'll get them queued up for you and answer as many of them as possible after the presentation. All the attendees today are muted, so we will not be able to hear your voice, and we will not be opening up any discussion in that context. We will have some polls that'll actually happen toward the front part, and please participate in the polls. It gives our presenter a good gauge of who's out there and what you want to hear today. And also, as with all SBDC training events, we have a survey at the end to better prepare for our next webinar or other training. So please take the survey. If you want some of the handout or some of the presenter materials today, please, in the survey, leave your email address, and we will PDF that out to you in just a couple of days. So what we do at the SBDC is we provide high-quality, very expert-driven, confidential one-on-one consulting to small business owners and prospective small business owners. We do a variety of training throughout that 14-county region and on various topics and also different mediums. The medium of choice for me down here is this webinar series, but we also do other things as seminars and workshops and classes and other things that benefit small businesses in our regions. Also, we do special projects, and we always act as an advocate for small businesses. Coming up next will be our webinar on building a local social media audience, 15 minutes a day. That'll be our webinar on June 8th, coming up in 2 weeks. Many of you will be contacted the same way you were this time. If not, you can actually go to our website at csub.edu/SBDC and enter go to webinar or go to webinar.com and enter the code 106-934691. Really, we've done about 60 webinars since 2013, and one of the great webinars. I really highly recommend that coming up in 2 weeks. Also, for those of you that are in the Bakersfield market, Kern County, next week we have, and we have not even promoted this, but it's next Wednesday, we have a full day training on QuickBooks with our presenter today, and this is being made possible through a grant through the UC Merced Regional Network. And Katie will come down to our office, provide training that is going to be very subsidized. Generally, these types of full-day trainings cost upwards of $500. $149. We have about 8 slots left. You'll want to contact our office and make arrangements if you're interested in that event. As I say, we haven't really promoted it beforehand, so you're getting first crack on it if you're on our webinar now. So, being a partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration and their National Administrator, Maria Contreras-Sweet, she really likes to report that it's the counseling that matters the most. And given the programs that the U.S. Small Business Administration has, with their lending programs and their procurement programs and a lot of the other stuff that they do. It's really a compliment to, I think, what a lot of us SBDCs do around California and around the nation. So please take advantage of our services. They're there for you, and we really do want to help make your business better. So, Katie Winters is our presenter today. And Katie has over 12 years experience working with QuickBooks. And she has 25 years experience in bookkeeping and accounting. Katie holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from CSU Long Beach. She's fortunate to grow up in a small family business and understands the challenges and rewards of operating a small business. Katie moved to the Central Valley. Technically, I refer to it as the San Joaquin Valley, at least this part of it, 17 years ago with her husband and 3 children. She operated her own business as a bookkeeping service for 8 years until she was hired as the assistant director for the Alliance SBDC in January of 2015. Katie enjoys working with small business owners, and she loves their passion and determination. And Katie and her husband own also a small almond ranch, if there is such a thing, in Oakdale, California. Katie, thank you for being with us. Take it away.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you see my screen, Kelly?
Absolutely.
Okay, just giving a double check. So, everyone for joining us this afternoon and for that nice introduction, Kelly. Again, I'm the Assistant Director for the Alliance Small Business Development Center. I'm located in Modesto in Stanislaus County. And here I do QuickBooks and financial consulting. And as Kelly said, I've been using QuickBooks for a long time. I grew up in a family business, and I actually received my degree from Cal State Long Beach because I'm originally from Southern California. I have 3 kids, and I'm going to share with you that my youngest is graduating from high school on Friday. Woohoo, super excited about that. And I do really working with small business owners. So going over our agenda today, it's quite packed, and hopefully we'll get through all of it, but I'll do my best to do that. Today's program really is designed for the desktop QuickBooks user, not the online user. The online and the desktop act and look very differently. So I just wanted to clarify that at the beginning. If you are an online user, welcome to stay aboard, but it's not going to apply directly to you. First thing we're going to start doing today is setting up a QuickBooks file from scratch, creating a new company. I think it's a good exercise to do because it shows you some of the options within QuickBooks that you may not be aware of. And then we're going to go through getting around in QuickBooks, looking at the home page, looking at the flow of QuickBooks. We're going to review the preferences screen. That's where you can select all the different options that you want from within your QuickBooks. We're going to talk about some accounting basics, things that you need to know to get that background on accounting, and then go into the meat of QuickBooks and working with lists and working with bank accounts, how to receive payments and make deposits, how to enter and pay bills. Then we're going to go into entering sales information, how to create an estimate and do progress invoicing within QuickBooks, doing payroll, and looking at our financials. And lastly, we'll have question and answer time for you. So I know that's a packed agenda. Hope I can get through it all, and like to start with a poll. Kelly, you have a poll?
Sure, got a couple of them for us today. Let's start with this one, and then we'll launch this first poll, and it's basically asking our attendees today, how long have you been using QuickBooks? And you have 5 options to choose from. This is my first time. I've used QuickBooks a little bit in the past. I've used it for a while, but still need some direction. I have used a lot. I've used QuickBooks a lot, but still need help. And I'm a longer-term user, hoping to find a few tips today. So please vote early, vote often. We'll be closing the polls in about 5 seconds. Right now, we're looking at about a split between the first 2. This is my first time. I've used QuickBooks just a little bit. And that's probably about 80% of our audience, 38%. If I close the poll right now, I'll share it with you. And there you see that first time, 37%. I've used QuickBooks a little, 39%, and I've used for a while but still need direction. Our more advanced users are less than 10% today. So thank you for participating in that poll. And what we'll do now is we'll move to our second poll, and then we'll turn it back to Katie. And it's basically a similar type question, but it's going to be a little bit different, is what is your current skill level with QuickBooks? And you can select between a beginner, some experience, I'm getting better but still need help, intermediate, or advanced. So again, jump in, vote early, vote often, show your patriotism. And a lot of the same. We got another couple seconds and we'll close the poll and move on. And there we go. I'll share the results with you right now. And there you go. It's pretty much mostly beginners with some experience, getting better is, and then just less than 5% are intermediate and advanced. So it looks like we are well positioned to work with you beginning and some experienced people with QuickBooks. So back to you, Katie.
All right, thank you. So what I wanted to start out with today is creating a new company. And I realize that many of you already have a company created. However, I do, again, think it's a good exercise to see what you can do within QuickBooks and what preferences are out there that you might not know about. And so if you were to boot up your QuickBooks and close any company that was on there, this is the screen that would show up. I've got a couple sample files on here, and I'm going to start right here with creating a new company. So when you start, you can get your business set up quite quickly. Instead of doing the express start, I'm going to start with a detailed start. If you're doing this at home for the first time, you would want to make sure that you had all your basic information ready to go. Your business name, your street address, and of course city, phone number, all that information. If for some reason you didn't have all that information available, there is a place that you could go in and enter that information in another place. The next thing you're going to do is select your industry. QuickBooks gives you a wide variety of industries. So everything from an accounting and bookkeeping business to construction. If you just move down and view these, a hair salon, insurance agency, there's really quite a few. Repair and maintenance, all the way down to a general product business or a general service-based business. Today we are going to select construction trade, like a plumber, electric, or HVAC client. And at this point, you would already know what kind of company you are, whether you're an LLC, an S or a C Corp. For our example, I'm going to choose a sole proprietorship. And then they're going to ask, when are you starting your fiscal year? That may or may not be the same as your calendar year, but I am going to choose January for our fiscal year. I recommend that you do set up a password. I'm not going to right now, but that's a good idea so that if your computer did get compromised, they couldn't get into your QuickBooks file. And now my computer is going to save my file. So it's creating the new file, it's saving it on my C drive where I've designated that I want it to be saved. Takes just a little bit of time. I can hear you typing, Kelly.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. From there, we're going to go into customizing QuickBooks for our specific business. So the first question it's going to ask is, what do you sell? Do you have services, products, or both services and products? For example, we're going to choose both services and products. Do you charge sales tax? I'm going to say that yes, we do charge sales tax. Do you want to create estimates in QuickBooks? If you are a business like a small general contractor or a design, some type of company, bids, quotes, or proposals, you're going to want to select yes here. Do you want to track customer orders in QuickBooks? I'm going to select no for that one. Using statements. Do you want to send out billing statements to your clients? If you are a business that is going to be extending terms to your clients and billing them, that's a good idea to be able to send them statements. Using progress invoicing. Most handy in construction, but can be used in other industries as well. If you're going to take payments up front, client in progressive amounts as the job is done, you're going to want to say yes there. Managing bills you owe. If you're going to want to keep track of your accounts payable, you're going to select yes there. Tracking inventory. So that's a big job in QuickBooks, but very doable. We're going to select no for this example, but you do have that option. Tracking time. You can also track time so you can bill your customers directly for time spent on a job. And do you have employees? I'm going to select no because we're not going to set up the payroll right now, but when we switch over to our sample company, we're going to actually go in and discuss doing payroll. So the next thing we're going to do is select when we're going to start tracking our finances. I'm going to say that we're tracking them as of the first of the year of 2016. And then QuickBooks gives a list of recommended accounts based on the business that we chose. And so they're recommending for income and expense accounts that we have job income, that we have a series of cost of goods sold, including subcontractor and material expenses. And then we have a list of overhead expenses that you can either select or unselect based on what is appropriate for your business. Again, this is a beginning setup. Anything that we are doing right now, we can change, edit, adjust that later if for right now you think it's going to work, but then later on you're saying, no, I'm really not going to use that. So they're listing all kinds of expense items, depreciation and insurance and interest, meals and entertainment, professional fees, rent. You can see all the standard expenses. Moving on, that's the completion of the general setup. And at this point, you can choose to add your customers and add vendors and products that you're going to want to put in your company. The only thing that we're going to do right now is we're going to add a bank account. So for example, if I had a checking account, I could put the checking account in, opening balance if I had an opening balance, and the balance date. QuickBooks always asks if you want to buy checks from them. I always say no, and the best place to buy them is Costco. They're about half the price. So we're going to move past that, and instead of adding that additional information at that point, we're going to say start working. So here is the company that we just set up. It's a very basic company. You're going to notice there's not a lot of extra icons. Within vendors, we can enter and pay bills. Within customers, we have quite a few icons. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to a more dynamic company that has more options in it for us to play with today. So this is a sample company. It's called Rockcastle Construction. It's the company that we use when we do the QuickBooks lessons here. As we're going through these lessons, please feel free to jot down any questions that you might have that we can answer at the very end. So to start with, now we're looking at another company file that's a much more complex company file. So within vendors, instead of having just enter bills and pay, we can also orders and receive inventory. So the first thing I kind of want to start with as a basic for QuickBooks is identifying some of the points here. The first, up at the top, this is what QuickBooks refers to as their menu. With each one of these, you have a drop down, and you have many, many options to click on each one of these drop downs. And so get used to your menu and what options you have there. We also have the icon bar. The icon bar currently is up in the top. You can change that over to the left. And so if you're a new user to QuickBooks and you just put that file on, you're probably seeing your icon bar over here. My preference is to have it up at the top, and so I do locate it up at the top. And I also have another personal preference that I can see what windows are open at any time over here on my left. And so I go into the View menu and enter my open window list. And this way I can work more quickly as I pop around into those different windows. I also like to work from the home page, and at any time if all of your windows were closed, and I'll go ahead and just close the ones that I had open. If you want to go to your home page, you can either access it directly here from the home icon, or you can access it from company, home, and probably several other places as well. You'll find in QuickBooks that you can do things in several different places, at least 3 for most functions. And so I want to talk about flow a little bit in the home page. I like to work from my home page. And if you notice, there are centers. And so this right here is your vendor center. I can go into my vendor center by clicking here. I can also go into my vendor center from clicking on my icon. But here's the natural flow from within my vendor center. We have purchase orders if you're using purchase orders for your business. And if you have inventory, you can receive inventory directly from your purchase order. You can enter a bill against that inventory. Or if this is an item that's not affected by inventory, say your PG&E bill or your rent or something like that, you can directly enter a bill and pay a bill. So there's the flow within the vendor center. Next, we have the customer center. You can create sales orders from purchase orders. You can create estimates or proposals or bids for a customer and turn those directly into an invoice. Or you can create an invoice, receive payment on that invoice, and then over in banking make a deposit. Also within our customer center is the ability to bill finance charges. If you extend terms to your customers and they're not paying those timely, you can add finance charges as well as create statements. The next center we have is our employee center. The employee center, oops, there we go, sorry about that. The employee center allows you to pay your employees, pay your liabilities, as well as process any of your payroll forms. There are several different options for payroll within QuickBooks. Enhanced payroll is probably the most popular. That is an add-on program, but that is an option if you want to do your payroll in-house and not have that done out-of-house by a payroll service. We also have our company center right here, which includes our chart of accounts, which is super, super important that you have a thorough understanding of your chart of accounts. And we have our banking center where you can record your deposit, you can write checks, or you can print checks that are queued to be printed. So the next thing that I'd like to touch on is the preferences. So up in our top menu, I'm going to go to Edit and drop down to Preferences at the very bottom there. And just want to give you an overview of some of the options that are available for you within QuickBooks. The first option here is accounting, and then under each of these preferences we have both my preferences and company preferences. And so some of you, as you're setting up your company, may choose to use account numbers, which are generally accepted accounting principle, to have an account number assigned to your different chart of accounts. You don't have to, but if you want to, that's where you're going to set that you're going to use account numbers. Some of you may want to use class tracking for transactions. And I think a good example of that is if you were a small construction company or any size construction company and you wanted to differentiate between residential customers and commercial customers. Or if you had a retail store and you had store 1 and store 2, this is a place where you can kind of categorize or lump things together in classes. And so this is where, if you currently aren't using classes, you would just click this to set that up. Under bills, we have several options. One option here is to automatically use credits. So if you have a credit on a vendor account, QuickBooks will automatically take that credit. Also, are allowed discounts from a vendor. If you pay within 10 days, they offer you a 1% discount. If you have this box checked, then it will automatically take that discount. You don't have to remember, your person in the office who's doing that doesn't have to remember to use that if it's paid within the 10 days. The next item we're going to look at is the checking preferences. So this is where you can choose what type of items are going to print actually on your check stubs. Do you want account names to print on the voucher? Do you want to be warned about duplicate check numbers? What checking account do you want to use if you have multiple checking accounts when you go into the either open create paychecks or you go into the payroll liabilities? And a good example is if I had a general account and I had a payroll account, make sure that all my payroll taxes were paid out of the payroll account, I could default that here and it would always open up to my payroll. Under My Preferences, you can select accounts for write checks, pay bills, as well as the pay sales tax and where you're going to make most of your deposits. So that's just kind of a handy thing to have that help you work more quickly and efficiently. Under the desktop view, QuickBooks automatically will start with the multiple window list, and that's where you're stacking a window upon window upon window. I prefer to work with multiple windows, but just make sure not to have 15 or 20 of them open because it will slow you down a little bit. One of my favorite things to do, excuse me, is to change my color scheme. And so right now I'm on blue-green. I'm going to go ahead and change that to a forest green, and you can see that the screen on my QuickBooks ribbons changed. This is especially convenient if you are working with multiple companies. If you color code them, you'll have less of a chance of maybe popping into one company when you really intended to be into a different one. Under Company Preferences, we have a few items here. I'm going to jump down to Finance Charges. This is where you're going to, if you do charge finance charges to customers on past due invoices, this is where you're going to set up that automatic rate that you're charging them, the percentage. Under General, you can choose decimals or how you want your numbers to look, decimals or dollars. That affects your payroll. Items in inventory, you can warn about duplicate purchase orders that are used. And then down under our jobs and estimates, if you are using the job function and you like to classify the jobs in what state they're at, you can change that wording. And if you are currently not using estimates, this is where you can say, yes, I want to use estimates. So for any job that does a bid, this is a great feature to use. This is also where you can decide if you needed to do progress invoicing. QuickBooks, this is where that feature gets turned on. Under payments, this is where you can automatically apply payments to particular invoices for your customers. So if the customer pays $1,000 on their account, QuickBooks will automatically apply it. You can always unapply it, or you can choose not to have this checked if you want to have the control of applying where you want the payments applied. And then going down to payroll and employees, as most of you are aware, I hope you're aware, there's a new law in California that all businesses are required to pay PTO to part-time and full-time employees. And if you want to have that information that's set as a default, right here under sick and vacation is where you're going to set that up. Then it'll default to each employee to have that set up to accrue that if you choose to accrue, or you can also set it up for a straight amount at the beginning of the year when they start working. That's where you're going to set that information. This is also where on your list of employees you can sort them by last name or first name. You can set your workers' comp, and you can also decide what information is going to print on your pay stub and voucher. So you can see that there are a lot of different options within QuickBooks that you get to choose. Dropping down to sales and customers, if you want to use price levels, that is an option here. And that would mean if you had a product and you had price level, price 1, price 2, and price 3, depending on if they're retail, wholesale, or a distributor, or however you have yours set up, you can use enable that price level function. This is where you're going to say if you're choosing sales tax or not. If you're currently not charging sales tax to your clients and you want to, you'll select yes there. And the last item I want to touch on here is the 1099. Most businesses out there need to print out 1099s at the end of the year. And so if this company preference is set to no, I would go ahead and change that to yes, and then go ahead and track who you need to send your 1099s to. So moving on, a lot of different preferences, but I think it's nice for you to be aware of what options are out there. I'm going to click OK there and go out of our preferences. And the next thing I want to do is pop into our chart of accounts. We can do that in several different ways, and we can do that with the icon here. We can go into company and choose to go on it down right here. So here within our chart of accounts, I'm going to move this bar down just for a sec. There we go. So in our chart of accounts tracks the flow of your money. And so it's important to understand where money is flowing and where it lands on both the balance sheet and your profit and loss. And so starting with the balance sheet includes assets, liabilities, and equity. The assets include what you have and what others owe you. So for example, here in our chart of accounts, the first thing we have is our bank accounts, and that's money that we currently have in the account for this company. Then we have accounts receivables. Those are monies that people owe us. We've done the work, we billed them, or we're waiting for that money. We also have several current assets. We've got some inventory, fixed asset. We have some vehicles, some equipment, some building improvements. So those are our assets. The next thing we want to drop down to is our liabilities. The liabilities are what your company owes others. And so we have some payables we do. We have some invoices that haven't been paid. And so that's our accounts payable. We have some credit cards that need to be paid. So we owe that money. We have some other current liabilities, including payroll taxes and sales. We also have several loans that are outstanding. And so when I go into a company and I'm looking at their profit and loss and I see loan payments on their profit and loss, that's a little bit of a signal that they're not quite understanding where a loan payment should be. A loan payment should really be on your balance sheet. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and you can see that here's our bank account for checking. And if we open up our balance sheet for the company, there you can see your bank account balances for all of those accounts, that accounts receivable balance that we saw, as well as the balance on all those assets. And just a reminder that your balance sheet is really a snapshot in time. So that is a snapshot of the health of our business right there as of December 15th in 2018 in the future. So then as we go down, we can see that all of our assets, our total assets, are $630 million. And now we have our liabilities, the monies that we owe to vendors and to credit cards and on our payroll taxes and on our sales tax. And if we look down at the very bottom, there is our equity. And of course, your liabilities and equity are always going to equal your assets. So moving on from there, I want to talk about the items that are on the chart of accounts, but they're not the assets and liabilities. I'm going to drop down a little further, and that's where you're going to see your income. You could have one income item, just job income total, or you could have multiple income streams, and you're dividing those up and maybe doing some analysis on those. Also have our cost of goods sold and our expenses. And those are the items that are going to show up on your profit and loss. And so I'd like to go ahead and under reports, company and financial, pull up a profit and loss statement and just give you a snapshot of the company of what their profit and loss looked like for the first half of December in the future. So we've got all of the income. Total income is $51,000 for this period of time. And then as we drop down, we can see all of our cost of goods sold, the difference between the two, and then we go into all the other expenses, the automobile, the rent, the insurance, postage, professional fees. And as we get down to the bottom, we can see what our income, our profit, or our loss was for that period of time. In this example, they also had a little bit of other income. And you'll notice when my cursor turns to the little magnifying glass, I can drill down on any of that. So I just did a double click. And if I were saying, well, what is that other income for? In this example, it looks like what they had was they had a client that didn't pay their bill on time, and they paid some finance charges on that overdue balance. And so that is what is in that other income column. And so their total net income was just under $14,000. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the chart of accounts, the balance sheet, and the profit and loss statement. Super important in analyzing your financials. So at this point, I'm going to go out of my profit and loss, and I want to talk about how to edit your chart of accounts. So within my chart of accounts, currently I have checking highlighted, and I would like to make that title a little bit more specific. And the way that I can do that is to go into account, and I can edit it. And so right now it's saying checking, and that's pretty ambiguous. I'm going to say it's Bank of the West. And I often go so far as to say the last 4 digits or that. If you have different people working on the account, it's really nice if you can for sure know exactly what checking account they're in, if you have multiple checking accounts, to not get them mixed up, to really label them specifically. So when I save and close, see now instead of it just saying checking, it actually says Bank of the West and has the last 4 digits. Another thing that you can do to organize your chart of accounts is to add sub-accounts. So I'm going to go down to my expense item, insurance. And so currently I have sub-accounts for disability, liability, comp, and employee portion of health. I want to add another column for health insurance. And so to do that, I'm going to go again down to my bottom left, bring up the drop up to add a new expense item. And you can see you can add income items, expense items, as well as assets, liabilities, banks, and all of that. The name of this is going to be health insurance. This is where you could assign a number. And I want that to be a sub-account of insurance. So now you can see I didn't assign a number, and that's why it's not showing one, but I could just double click, pop back in there, and assign a number if I wanted to. You can see it's fairly easy to add items on your chart of account, to add sub-items. You can edit, and then of course you can delete, but QuickBooks will only let you delete an item if it's not been used. And so if you come across an item that you are just not using anymore, or someone else added and you don't think it's useful, if you again either go down here and click edit, or I'm going to do a right click, and it gives me that same option. I can new, edit, delete, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and make that account inactive, and it's going to drop off that list, so I'm not seeing it anymore. If I want to see that, I can just click on inactive down here in the bottom, and it will open up those accounts. For now, I'm going to unclick that. We're going to leave the chart of accounts right now, and I'm going to open up our Customer Center. And so one of the first things you're going to need to do is add customers, because that's what it's about. We want to make sales. We want to have customers. And so I have a list here. First thing I'd probably do is check and see if the customer is already on our list. And so you can scroll up and down your list of customers, but an easy way to navigate here is to just type a letter I typed a W, it took me down to the W's. I type a T, it takes me up to the T's. So I'm going to go down to my W's and see if I'm entered as a customer, and I don't see my name. So I'm going to, from up at the top, new customer and job, enter myself. So I am Winders Katie. If I had a company name, I could enter that there. And I'm not going to go and enter all this information because it would take a while. And I'm going a lot slower than I thought I was. So I need to speed it up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and you can enter in all the information. And from within here, you also have many tab options. You have payment settings, sales tax settings, additional information, as well as this is where you can enter your job info. So now pretend I entered all the rest of the information there. And in this example, I also want to enter a job. And so from here, I'm going to double click up at the top left again and add a job under my customer. So if you're doing any type of job costing, you'll need to enter that job, your jobs as well. So this job is going to be Windows. And when I enter that, you'll see underneath Katie, I have a job called Windows. If you are doing job costing, you'll need to have jobs. You'll notice it's an option over here. Whereas under just the customer, you don't have an option to do job costing. So I'm going to go back to the main menu and to the home page, sorry. And I want to go ahead and write a check within QuickBooks. And so if you're just wanting to write a check, the repair guy is coming and you need to cut him a check after he's here, you can go ahead and just click on the write check. And this way is where you're going to, I can code that I'm going to print that check right after I write it. You select the date and you select the client that you're going to write the check to. If there's a purchase order open, it'll give you that warning. You can select that or not. And when Daggle Lighting delivers this merchandise to me, I'm going to immediately write him a check. And in this example, I'm going to expense it to cost of goods sold, job materials. And then all we would need to do is click print check right here, and that check's going to print out. The next thing I want to show briefly, because I realize it's going a little bit slower than I thought I would, is how to enter a bill and pay a bill. So from within the vendor center, we could do it on the front here, but we could also go directly into the vendor center, and that's where we can enter a bill and then pay it, and that way you're able to track your accounts payables and see exactly what bills are open at any time, and that's handy for tracking your cash and what needs to go out. So if I needed to enter a bill for Cal Telephone, I'm going to do a right click, enter a bill, and enter all the pertinent information on this bill, and then code it to the appropriate expense account. And then we're ready to pay that bill. Up from new transactions, we can go into pay bills, and it gives you a full list of all the bills that have been entered and waiting to be paid. So we could pay our Cal Telephone, we could pay Daggle Lighting, whichever ones we wanted to pay. We're just going to click on those, select a date, and pay selected. At that time, it'll give you the option of printing those checks. Once they're printed, they're going to show up in your check register. So those checks are printed. Oops. And when I go back to the home page, I can open up our Bank of the West checking account and see that those invoices, those checks I just wrote, are now automatically in my checking account. So I want to show a couple reports. For those of you, we already talked about the profit and loss in the balance sheet, but those of you are using the accounts payable function. Under reports, if you go to your vendors, you can slide over to an accounts payable aging summary, and this opens up all the vendors that you've entered that you're waiting to pay their bills, and it's also showing it by aging. So if you're behind on any of those invoices, you would see it here. Another report that I like to look at is reports under customers, and that's your accounts receivable report. That's the money that will owe you. And you can see each customer, each job under the customer, and exactly the balance due that they owe with a total at the very bottom. And so if you had numbers out here in the over 90 day, you would want to get on the phone and start making some phone calls and get those collections in. So Kelly, I did not go as fast as I want. Apparently I talk slower when I'm doing it on here than when I'm doing it in practice. So do you want to go into questions now, or do you want me to cover a couple more things?
Well, we have probably about 5 minutes worth of questions. So why don't you take another 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll finish off with the questions.
Okay, thank you for your input. And so let's go ahead and talk about the Customer Center for just a minute. So we entered a bill, we paid a bill within our vendors. We wrote a check here. This is where we're also going to write a check on the fly. Or if you go to Costco and you're doing a handwritten check after the fact, this is where you're going to do that. But let's go into our Customer Center and see how to create an invoice. And so myself, I'm going to have a window job done. And so I'm going to go either up here and create an invoice from here, or I can click right on the window and do a right click and create an invoice from here, either way. So it's going to pull up an invoice, and you can see it looks very intuitive, just like a regular paper invoice would look like. And I'm going to tab through. I would choose the date of the invoice number. It would have this information filled in if I put in more information. And then I'm going to select an item. And so in this example, I'm going to do some window repairs. So I'm going to put that under repairs. It'll automatically default to a description, but I can change that if I want to. I can say that that job is going to take 5 hours at $35 an hour. And then you can continue to add different items to the invoice, or if that was it, you would just save and close. Once the customer is invoiced, it's going to show up in your report here how much they owe you. And of course, if you ran that customer receivable report, it now is going to have myself added there. Let's see, covering one more little difference I'd like to talk about. I created an invoice here, but you also have an option for a sales receipt. Use invoices when you're going to bill the customer. The customer is going to send you the money, and then you're going to use sales receipts. And here's your sales receipt right here, when the customer is paying for that item immediately, and it actually posts the payment at the same time entering the sale. So let's go ahead and receive a payment for the remodel for Mr. Allard here. So if I received a check in the mail, so we did a remodel job for him. We've received the check in the mail, and now I want to post a payment. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the job that I'm receiving the payment on, select New Transactions up top, select Receive Payment, and then from here, let's say he submitted a $10,000 check. I'll select the date, the check, and QuickBooks will automatically assign it to this invoice because it's the only one open, and it will show an underpayment of the balance due that he still owes. And so now the money he owes is reduced by the $10,000, and we can make that deposit into the checking register for when you do your reconciliation. So Kelly, do you want to go to questions now?
I am ready for questions.
Okay.
Well, let's start with how do we get a copy of the seminar for download? So I can handle that one. And the webinar is being recorded and will be on our website, which is www.csub.edu with the /SBDC. And you can view it from that website. So that's one place you can go. Here's a more specific question. I would like to see how you can create a customer invoice for a service type business.
Okay.
Can you do that quickly?
Yeah. So for example, let's say, so this is, creating invoices is the same. So let's say for me, I'm just a customer and I'm not doing jobs. I'm just a customer and I'm not going to have jobs underneath it. So you could just do a right click or go up to under new transactions, select invoice, and then scroll through, and your item is going to be some type of service item. So let's say an installation would be a good example of a service. And then you could either do that as a lump sum, so you're going to charge them $1,000 for maybe whatever that installation is. And when you save and close, that invoice has been created. So it's as simple as that. And then let's see, on your profit and loss, once you've created that invoice, that's where that income is going to show up. So hopefully that was clear enough. So just right there within customer and create invoice. Remember, your customers are the people that are paying you, and your vendors are the people that you're paying, your rent, your utilities, that type of thing. So you want to make them a customer and then create an invoice for that service.
Okay, great. Next question is, how big is the difference between QuickBooks on a Windows-driven system compared to a Mac?
So similar in look. There's some features that are window-based. For example, when I'm on a customer and I do this right-click and it gives me my list of options that I can do, that's not available in Mac because that's, I guess, a Windows function and not a Mac function. So instead of doing a right-click, you would just use the buttons up here. So it has pretty much the same functionality. The Mac also uses a little wheel for a lot of its functions. So you can do most of the same things. The Mac is a tiny bit more limited just because they've been working on the Windows version a lot longer, but you have all the functionality.
Okay, great. Which industry can I select when setting up a chart of accounts for a pool service company?
You could select the service one, or you could even select the general contractor one, and then, because I'm assuming you have services and products, if you're replacing a filter or a pump or something. I think even that the one I selected, the general contractor one for a specific trade, would be a good one for you. And then you can go into your chart of accounts and edit any of those items that don't apply. So for example, if for an income account, you could actually make your income accounts say pool service income and then maybe pool repair income if you're keeping items separate, which I would think you would want to do those separately on your profit and loss.
This next question sounds like it's kind of construction driven, but I'll let you determine that. How can I print a profit and loss for a specific job?
So I'm going to go back over a couple things. So you can go into your customer center, and here's our customer, and here's our job. You can print a job profitability report here. So as long as all of your expenses, you are entering that expense is specific for this job customer, when you click on that job profitability report, it will show you all of the income for that job as well as the costs for that job, and therefore giving you a difference. And that is huge. Job costing is huge for the small construction business, because you go out, you bid a job, and you really need to make sure that what you're bidding that job for is in line with what the actual costs are costing you. And so that's that job profitability. So I'm going to X out of here again and show you within your job, that button's right here. You can also access that from reports under customers, but it's right here is an easy way to access it.
Okay, the next question. Mark asked, what is the number for the QuickBooks training next week in Bakersfield on June 1st? And actually, you can call our office at 661-654-2856. And again, Katie will be there in person from 9 to 3, full day conference, $149, very limited space. So thanks for allowing me to get in that shameless plug that will help many of you small business owners, Mark. And next question. is, can you change the company type after establishing a different type?
So you're an LLC and you want to change to S Corp or C Corp or something like that, or let's just say you entered it incorrectly to begin with. So yes, you could go into the company menu, and then I believe it's under my company, and it's actually been a while since I did that, but I believe from within the company information, you can edit it from in here. So I'm not sure exactly because it's been a little while since I've done it, but the answer is definitely yes, and it's somewhere in the company menu bar. So.
Okay. And moving right along, since we're running out of time and we got a few more questions, does the profit and loss, does it record when you invoice and receive or when the company actually receives the payment?
Okay, super, super great question. And so your company is either on an accrual basis or a cash basis. And if you don't know, go ahead and find your tax return, and it's actually going to be on there. It's going to show basis, and a box is going to be checked by your accountant that's either cash or accrual. And so this company is set up on accrual, but if I wanted to change that, I would just go into customize and select cash. And what the difference is with cash basis, the sale is recorded and the expense is recorded when the money, the cash, is exchanged. So for example, when the check is received or a payment is made. Under accrual basis, the income is recognized when the job happened and was invoiced, not when the money came in. And the same thing with bills that you owe or expenses. Those are recognized when they're entered and accrued, not when they're actually paid. And that makes a big difference. But you'll want to find out and just be consistent running your reports for what kind of basis you are, cash or accrual.
Okay, quickly, how do we record money from sales through Square or PayPal?
So with Square, you're going to go ahead and, so let's do an example. So I have a customer, Mr. Allred, once again. He made a $10,000 payment by check. He still has a balance due, and he says, can I put that on my credit card? And you use the Square option. And so we're going to go up here. We're going to still receive a payment. But in this option, we're going to say that he's putting 4510 on a, you can put debit card or credit card. Here's an option. You can add, you can even add Square payment if you want here. So identify it as a Square payment. You could even put Square here if you wanted to. And then run it through your Square, save and close, and now that payment has been processed as a payment by Square. One extra step you're going to do is when you make that deposit, I'm going to banking deposit, and I know I'm hopping around kind of fast. When we make that Square deposit, you're going to want to deduct the fees that were charged by Square so that the amount matches the amount on your bank statement. So you're going to need to post some fees here to your credit card fee account, subtract those, whatever the dollar amount is, and so that the deposit total that you're making matches what actually went into your bank account. So you do need to pull up your Square online, and really it's the same thing with PayPal as well. You can make your, just note that it was PayPal if you'd like to do that.
And I know we're running a few minutes long, and anybody can just jump off if they like, but since the questions are so good and the content is so valuable, is there a category, Katie, to put driving mileage in?
I don't believe so. So if you have someone, you mean that's getting reimbursed, like an employee getting reimbursed for their mileage?
I believe so, yes.
In that case, I would probably when I were reimbursing the employee for their mileage, I would probably just do it in the check function. However, I do know that there are several add-on apps to QuickBooks as well as just apps on your phone that you can use to track your mileage. So you might want to use your phone, track your mileage, and then just enter it in here when you're wanting to reimburse your employee for that mileage. Or they might mean that you're wanting to charge a customer. I'm not quite sure. But either way, there's nothing specifically that I know on unless it's an add-on app.
Okay, can you track reoccurring sales over multiple months?
So for example, let's say you are a pool service business and you do charge a monthly fee to your customers. You can do a couple things. You could create an invoice and then each month go in and duplicate that invoice by opening up the invoice, doing a right click and doing duplicate. Otherwise, there is a way to, yes, to have reoccurring invoices. So it's a little bit more process than I can show right now, but you can do reoccurring invoices. And that's what I'm thinking. If you had like a pool service business or you had like a alarm business or something where you're billing customers monthly, and there is a process to do that.
Besides the P&L and balance sheet, are there other reports that you would recommend?
So my favorite reports, income, company and financial, of course, is the profit and loss in the balance sheet, because that gives you a good idea of are you making money and what is the health of your business. And then I also showed you under customers and receivables, the accounts receivable aging summary, as well as under vendors, the AP aging summary. Another one that I like to use under vendors is the unpaid bills detail. Excuse me. And what's nice about that one is it shows you each vendor, but it also breaks it down by bill and it breaks it down by due date. So if you're wanting to go through and maybe you're cash strapped this week and you're trying to decide what to pay, you can run this report, check the due date, and either choose the vendors that you feel are more urgent or the ones that are due the earliest. And so this will give you a nice listing there. And then, of course, if you are a business that does job costing, doing job costing reports are essentially, oh, there's the time and mileage right there. And honestly, I haven't played around with that too much, but it looks like I'm always learning too. I've been doing this a long time, but I'm learning too. So it looks like there's some options down here and to play with that. So if you come to class next week, I will have to have that figured out before we have class. So
yes,
those are the main
last
reports.
Question, because our 55-minute webinar is running into 65 minutes.
Okay.
When paying my business accounts, which are basically her bills, using the online bill paying option, is there a manual entry capability?
Yeah, so you're online through the bank, is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not sure.
So you could do a couple things. You can either go in, let's say you're paying them online through your bank. You can either go in to write checks and enter them here. So you could say, like, if you went on and paid whatever that amount is, you can enter it here, and it'll automatically record it in your check register. Or you can pop directly into the check register and enter it here. Say you paid by EFT or auto or online or whatever you did. And again, we paid CalGas and we paid them. You can enter it directly in here as well. Just make sure you have everything, you have it posted to the correct account. And then I do like, instead of having a check number, to make some type of designation that makes sense to you, that you know exactly what you did there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Katie. We appreciate your time and your expertise. And thank you in advance for coming down next week and doing a full day with us next Wednesday. On June the 8th will be our next webinar, Building a Social Media Audience in 15 minutes a day or less. And our social media expert will teach you a lot of tips and tricks on updating your social media that day. You can go to our website and register for that one. That'll be June 8th. And for Katie Winders, I'm Kelly Bearden. Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you next month. Goodbye now.
Thank you.